Goeienaand, baie welkom by For Anglers Live en ons kuier saam met julle vanaand. 'n Lekker koel aand en natuurlik, dis die beste tyd wanneer die groot visse begin byt. En ek het ook saam met my in die ateljee een van die groot hengelaars in my boeke. 'n Jong man, maar 'n groot hengelaar met 'n groot hart. Christopher Pelser, welcome here with us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you had like more than a ton of fish at the Kaap, SA Kaap Open.
That's correct, John. It was an amazing experience. We're very fortunate.
Big bag of fish, eh?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of fish.
72 hours, 1.1 plus ton.
Yeah. 1,117.
Ja.
361 fish.
Wel, daar is 'n groot klomp vis en ons gaan nou met Christopher gesels daaroor. Dan, wat kan jy nog verwag? Ons gaan ook vanaand 'n bietjie vir jou vertel wat kan jy in die volgende paar maande gaan doen in die hengelkalender. Ons het 'n interessante tip of twee van kankerer. Ek wys vir julle 'n mooi knoop vir Braai Tumono. Ons het vir Andries Maree, die SASAC president, wat ook nou internasionaal by SIPS, dit is die Wêreldliggaam Konfederasie, is hy nou die nuwe visiepresident daar. Uitmuntende prestasie vir Suid-Afrika en ons het hom ook in die ateljee, ons gesels met hom. En dan gee ons natuurlik oudergewoonte weer 'n paar goedjies weg vir twee gelukkige wenners, intekenare en dit is omtrent dit, maar ek en Christopher gaan lekker gesels oor hoe vang jy meer as 'n ton se vis by Bloemhofdam. Nou ja, kom ons gaan kyk na die hengelkalender en ons kyk wat is daar vir jou om te doen en waar jy wat kan gaan wen. Hier is nog so 'n ou laat enetjie wat jy kan inslip as jy vreeslik graag wil Henties Baai toe gaan en jy het dit op jou beplanning in die volgende paar weke. Maak seker jy is daar op die 31ste Mei hierdie jaar by Myl 50 Henties Baai. Dit is die jaarlikse galjoen derby. So, dis die tyd om galjoene te gaan vang in Namibië. Jy kan 20.000 Namibiese dollar wen. As 'n eerste plek, tweede plek 10 en 'n derde plek 5.000. Daar is ook talle lucky draws en baie meer. Skryf nou in, maak seker jy gaan Namibië toe en gaan vang 'n paar galjoene daar op Henties Baai, se Myl 50. Nou hier is 'n lekker kompetisie op koue wintersdae vir warm somersharte. Daar is 'n fondsinsamelingskompetisie vir klein Johan Drey wat sy arm verloor het tydens die krokodielaanval by Rodekoppies en daarvoor word daar weer eens ingespring deur die hengelindustrie en fondse ingesamel. So die 6de tot die 8ste Junie kan jy optrek na Mihanzi by die Vaaldam en kom deelneem aan hierdie heerlike kompetisie. Die Vrydag kan julle intrek en so lank begin kamp en 'n bring en braai bywoon. Vanaf Saterdagoggend 6:00 is die hengel tot Sondagmiddag 12:00. Dan word daar groot pryse uitgedeel, onder andere R12.000 se kontant en baie ander pryse. So kom spring gerus in, bring jou warm hart saam vir 'n lekker koue winterskompetisie en maak 'n verskil in Johan Drey se lewe. It is time for the Big Fish Challenge again. 13 to 16 of June, Rodekoppies Dam. How does it work? You can go and fish as a family wherever you want, any resort. And your catches will be taken into account if you have entered for the Big Fish Challenge. You can win up to 50,000 Rand in cash for the 3 biggest carp. The Pro Carp app will be the official weighing utility that they will use, and your catches will be logged on there and verified by marshals. There's a total of 100,000 Rand in cash to be won. There are dedicated zones for boats and for bank angling. So enjoy this one as a family. Hier is natuurlik 'n hoogtepunt op die kalender. Dit is die Gys Spitzer Winter Classic. Ongelooflike sukses gewees in 2024. Die tweede weergawe daarvan in 2025. Maak seker jy skryf hierdie datum op jou kalender in groot rooi letters. Moet dit nie mis nie. Daar sal natuurlik weer R100,000 kontant vir die eerste prys wees en 'n waalvrag vol ander pryse. En die oomblik as dit oopmaak in Mei maand, moet julle boek, want daardie kaartjies gaan nie lank beskikbaar wees nie. Dit word beperk tot 100 spanne en dit is dit. So maak seker jy spring gou. Dis weer sulke tyd en die Bloemhof Bonanza is op pad met trots geborg deur die Courier Guy. R100,000 vir die grootste karp en R50,000 vir die grootste baber. Nou grootste is natuurlik lengte. Dis hoe hulle meet. Jy kan jou kaartjies kry van die 10de Februarie af. Gaan gerus na Echo Care Trust se Facebook bladsy en kry meer inligting oor hierdie Bloemhof Bonanza 2025. Lekker kamp en visvang by Club Amigos se karavaanpark is altyd heel bo aan die agenda vir hierdie opwindende naweek van kuier, braai, hengel, kamp en net lekker agteroor sit en nog intussen 'n klompie pryse te wen. Die 3de tot die 5de Oktober is net die tyd wanneer die groot visse begin byt na die winter en jy kan by Club Amigos kan uitkamp vir daardie naweek. Kontak gerus Club Amigos by www.clubamigos.co.za en gemaak seker jy skryf in. Campmaster en stywelinne sal ook natuurlik daar wees, so kom kuier saam met ons en hengel lekker by Club Amigos se hengelnaweek 3 tot 5 Oktober 2025. One of the events that is always a highlight on the annual calendar of deep sea fishing and especially bullfish fishing is the Bullfish 15,000 presented by the Dorado Ski Boat Club. So for 2025, the date is the 9th to the 14th of November, and the entries will open at the end of May. A Sea Cat 63, valued at 1.2 million, fitted with a Yamaha, is on the cards. Make sure that you are there. If you're a deep sea angler and especially good at bullfish fishing, then go and enter at the end of May for the annual Bullfish 15,000 presented by Dorado Ski Boat Club. Laerskool Hendrik Potgieter in Reddersburg hou jaarliks in November 'n vlieghengelkompetisie as 'n fondsinsamelingsprojek. En jy gaan daar by Wasbank kan hengel. Jy kan natuurlik vir die naweek kom in 'n lodge of bly of jy kan kom kamp. Thank you, Campmaster, for making this possible. And it's also time to say thank you to our sponsors, Gijspitzer Motoring as the main sponsor, Orion Audiovisual that looks after the technology in the studio, and then Campmaster that makes sure we've got a nice campsite. What do you think about our campsite?
Very comfortable.
Lekker.
Yeah,
You stop met net loop. You hear it and we strike.
Yeah, 100%.
Christopher, do you still remember this?
Yo. Now we're going down memory lane, eh? I think I was 15 years old or so there. Long time ago.
Ja.
Fond memories.
Toe was jy so, kyk hoe mooi vandag. Dit was die eerste keer wat Christopher op die Oeverengelaar se cover was. Jy en 'n vriend by Harties.
Yeah, with Jason Stander.
Ja.
We were still learning how to carp fish back then. Had some help from him, Loki, who came and gave us some lessons out there on the island.
Ja. Ja. And you did well. You had a couple of nice fish.
Yeah, I think we had about 400 kilos
Yeah.
for that 72-hour practice session. It was a great fishing memory.
Okay, so starting off with 400 kilos at Harties, working up to 1.1 ton at Bloemhof. From a developmental point of view, what do you as an angler have to go through to get to a level where you can actually catch more than a ton?
Sure, it's a good question. Firstly, you need to have a great peg mate. So I definitely want to call out and shout out Hakim, my partner. Would have never done it without him. So really appreciate him.
But I believe on a more personal note, I believe he was full of nonsense. This whole competition, he had a bit of a bug.
Oh, shame, man. He was a real fighter. He was sick in the tournament on 2 of the nights, but he pushed through, and I was really proud of him for not giving up. We would have not achieved what we had achieved if he hadn't pushed through.
Yeah, but having that type of tummy bug and have to fish for 72 hours takes a bit of guts, eh?
I tell you, I don't know how he did it. He found energy from somewhere.
Because jy word mos so lam en tam as jy elke halfuur moet toilet toe gaan en how do you get yourself through that? I mean, you lose a lot of hydration and all of that.
Obviously, it's very depleting. So you need to make sure the fluids keep going in and so on. But I think just his determination and strong spirit is what pulled him through. I think many people would have given up a long time ago.
Yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so let's get back to the question.
Yeah,
so what brings you to that from a developmental point of view as an angler? And you said the first thing is you need the right pigmate. Okay, so now I've got the right pigmate. What else do I need?
You need to meet the right people along the way. You will never get to that level of the sport if you don't have people who are willing to teach you, as well as a platform on which you can practice and be developed and so on. So I've been super privileged, obviously, with my father, who has taught me a lot. But if it wasn't, for him alone, all the other people, great people I've met along the way have taught me so much. And being given exposure, I was really, really fortunate to be exposed to things that most people my age were not yet exposed to. I went to my first World Championships as a spectator. It was before the time of technical advisors and SASAC members and so on. So being involved in the team dynamic and seeing what the sport is about, sharing information, observing, learning, this is definitely super important. But in terms of getting to the over a ton mark, that comes down to having somebody teach you about systems, having a lot of experience so that you make less mistakes. And obviously you need the right strategy to achieve something like that. And you need a little bit of luck. You need to be on the right place at the right time, in the right weather condition. And this tournament, although we had some challenges with rising water levels, we had a perfect weather pattern and a perfect moon pattern for the event, which I think is evident in the results.
There was another pig that was close to a ton as well. So there were enough fish to be caught. That's from all the other environmental factors point of view.
For sure.
You're talking about systems. There's two things that you mentioned that is important to me. The one is you said you must make less mistakes, and the other one is you need to understand systems. Tell us a little bit about systems that make something like this possible.
Sure. So from a systems point of view, you need to be thinking about how do I save time? Because this time compounds over a 72-hour period of time. If you end up saving 2 minutes on somebody else, over that duration of time, that number of casts, that many fish, 2 minutes turn into hours. So you really need to pay attention to how far, say for example, the place you're baiting up is from the place that you're casting.
So ergonomics, so how you set up your camp.
Sure. How you set up your camp is crucial.
How do you set up your camp?
When I get to the water, and this is actually a really good example because we had a difficult type of peg with a difficult type of water condition. With the water level being so high, getting in and out of the water was a challenge. A big step. So I saw there was an area on the left-hand side where somebody had made a step previously. So I knew I would be going down that step from the start. And the right-hand side, it sort of wasn't a big step. It sloped down into the water. So it was much easier to land fish on the right. So I knew that I wanted to set myself up to catch more fish on the right. Still, obviously, you have to catch fish on the left. But even then, I thought about how do I set up close to that step that my two entry points to the water are close to the points where my rods are being set up. And I think about that and maybe waste what some people might say, wasting 15 minutes of time, thinking these things through before I put my camp up.
Okay, so the time that you lose in the beginning, you make up exponentially later on.
For sure, especially because a decision like that's not going to be unmade. Once the camp is up, it's
As
up.
jy opgestel het, dan as jy penne geslaan het, dan sit jy.
If you lose 15 minutes because you start 15 minutes late, which you shouldn't do, we still manage to start on time. But I would rather start 20 minutes late when the bite tempo is low, the fish are not really on, it's the start of the competition, and set myself up that towards the end, when the bite time is 3 minutes or something like that, that I'm set up to optimize that situation.
Okay. You also spoke about mistakes. What type of mistakes would you like to get rid of?
Sure. So in our sport, sleep deprivation is a big factor. So say, for example, my choice of landing net, going for a landing net that my fish's fins are not going to get stuck in, so that I don't cut my hands that end up swearing and getting infected and, slow me down later in the competition. Fighting fish. It's easy to get caught up in the moments, especially when the fish are biting on such a high tempo, that you think now is the time to force the fish. And, if I throw in again, I'm immediately going to catch another one. Where rather being patient, taking your time, doing the right thing the whole time.
Understanding that the fish on the line is the most important one.
Doesn't help if the rod next to you is running. If both of you are in the water catching a fish and you lose this fish because you're chasing the fish that's running on the bank. So you need to remember every time the fish on the line only counts once it's in the net. Doesn't mean anything that you've got a rod running and you're forcing this fish and you drop it.
I gather that you will have to force fish a little bit to get to the numbers. Now, here comes, I believe, a balance. Now, it's almost like muscle memory. How do you get to that point where you are used to, this is how hard I can pull?
I think in this particular event, there's a really good example. We lost the first 4 fish that we hooked. Then we got better and better at landing them. And a lot of it came down to, how do I strike the rod? How do I fight the fish? I talk sometimes about like walking the dog. Rather let the fish come to you than you pulling the fish into you. And that was really important in the beginning of the competition. Then you begin to get a feeling of how hard can I play these fish, because now you've lost a couple. So you begin to feel where's the limit. And once you hit that sweet spot is where you optimize that.
Do you think that there is that fishing fitness is a real thing?
Definitely. When you're doing as much work as we did on this particular competition, I mean, we caught 361 fish. We fed 200 kilograms of bait. The amount of costs and physical exertion that you're putting in definitely catches up with you. And your back will take a serious beating. I did exercise leading up to this event to prepare myself for this, because I felt it on last year's essays. For the first time ever. I suppose I'm getting a bit older now.
Catching up with you.
Yeah, and as you begin to fatigue, especially if you're fishing at distance, 110 meters or whatever, that type of distance. I personally had this problem when I get tired that I throw like a low punchy cast. I'm wasting time bringing that out, resetting that rod. So I wanted to make sure that didn't happen again. And definitely this time around was much better.
How important with the way that you feed, and we'll get to that detail a little bit later as well. But how important is it to actually hit the mark when you feed such a lot in a little bit of a wider area? And if you are 2 or 3 or 5 meters to the left or not really there, how important is that?
I think it's really important to have distance control. And throughout the competition, you will play with distances. I like to play with small changes in distance. And you'll definitely find a number that the fish are on. And that'll be something between fairly behind your feed, just behind your feed, in your feed, in front of your feed, this type of dynamic, where finding the fish becomes important. And Yeah, I think that would probably be my biggest.
So then a meter or 2 meters can make a difference.
Definitely. Definitely can.
And if you don't hit the spot, will you take it out and recast, or will you leave it? Kom ek los hom net so rukkie.
Yeah, sure. So different anglers are different. My dad will tell you sometimes he used to get frustrated with me because I'm a very particular type of person when it comes to throwing a rod, hitting the clip, knowing it's exactly where I think that it is. So, like, say, for example, on my peg, normally what I like to do is somebody's casting, whether that's me or that's Hakim. That person will then know the exact spacing of each rod based on the landmarks, will know exactly how they hit that clip, that they hit it precisely the same every time. And I just don't feel confident. If I've just had a fish in 6 minutes, I threw it exactly at that target, I hit the clip in exactly this way,
You're happy with it.
I'm happy with it.
If it doesn't land there, you'll take it out.
If it throws out again and I've got a baited hook link and it's ready to go, I'll pull it out and throw it again. Because mentally, I'm thinking about what's going on under the water and exactly how my rods are lying at this time. Or even if I throw a rod on top of another rod, or it's just too close to that rod and I'm not comfortable with the spacing, I'll take it out and throw it again.
Okay, so confidence is important with where it's lying.
Sure.
Okay. Well, when we get back, we'll talk a little bit closer to how you did it.
Sure.
Wel, daar's hy. Kom ons gaan kyk wat is volgende op die agenda. Dis lekker op pad hier in Mosambiek. Die lang pad, ons gaan visvang.
Ja,
Ons gaan visvang, maar ons moet eet ook.
daar baie vir.
Maar ons het nou ver gery al en nou is ons honger. Maar gelukkig het ons 'n paar hoendertjies, maar hulle moet lekker warm word. Pieter se cruiser het 'n oond in. Pieter, vertel vir ons van die oond.
Ja, so hy werk van 12 volt af. Hy kan nogal stroom trek, maar dit maak nie saak nie want dis 'n travel oven. So jy gebruik hom terwyl jy ry.
Okay, so ons gaan hom nou insit en dan gaan ons ry.
Ja, ons sit hom in vir so 40 minute, dan stop ons en dan kan ons lekker warm hoender vir.
Okay, wel, daar's hy.
Dis hy.
Off you go.
Warm
In die
hoender met
oond.
koue bier. Ja. So ons so 120 grade sit vir 40 minute. Nou hy.
Hoender is in die oond. Ons gaan nou verder ry. Bietjie later stop en dan gaan ons, ek weet nie, ek het dit nog nie gesien nie, maar hopelik 'n lekker warm hoender uit die oond uit al.
Gaan lekker warm wees.
Kom ons kyk hoe lyk dit later. Kom ons ry verder.
Right. Kom ons loer. Ry kom vir dit. Kyk hoe mooi, kyk hoe mooi, kyk hoe mooi.
What?
Lekker warm.
Oh, het is warm. Is hy zwaar?
Het is zwaar, het is warm. Alright, lekker eet.
Alright. Jessie, dit is nou vir my die ongelooflikste oontjie hierdie. Ek het nie gedink hulle kan op 12 volt dit doen nie. Pieter, well done vir julle ouens. Yes. Ek het gedink gas of 'n plaat of so iets, maar 'n oond 12 volt terwyl jy ry.
Ons gebruik wat ons het, hè.
Well done. Dis nou lekker.
Cheers.
Dis so lekker warm as hy. Ons kuier nou met 'n baie belangrike gas in my oë en een van my mentors in die hengelwêreld en veral aan die administratiewe kant, een van ons uitblinkers in Suid-Afrikaanse hengel met betrekking tot administrasie, die sekretariaat van SAFOF as ook SASAC se president. Andries Marie, baie welkom hier by ons.
Dankie Werner, dankie vir die geleentheid.
Jy het nou al so lang luister accolades en jy het nou nog ene bygesit. Ons is nou nog trots op daai ene.
Ja, dankie Werner. Nee, dis nie 'n prestasie wat ek behaal het nie. Dis 'n regtige prestasie wat Suid-Afrika behaal het oor tyd. Jy weet, ek het nou maar daarom die erkenning daarvoor te kan kry. Maar daar's baie mense wat oor jare hard gewerk het om vertroue in die buiteland te kry vir ons hengel, ons administrasie, ons manier van goed wat ons doen. So ek dink nie, jy weet, mense kan dit nie aan my toeskryf nie. Ek is maar net op hierdie stadium daar.
Maar jy is die titelhouer en net om vir ons kykers te sê wat is hierdie titel. Andries is aangewys of hy's verkies in die afgelope SIPS kongres as visiepresident van SIPS. Nou dit is die internasionale konfederasie van hengel. So dit is die hoogste gesag in hengel en al die ander federasies soos varswater en seehengel en alles sorteer dan daaronder. En dis ook nou, sover dit my kennis strek, die eerste keer wat iemand uit varswatergeleedere daardie pos beklee. Omaimi uit die seekant het al dit in die verlede gedoen namens Suid-Afrika.
Ja, dis reg, ja.
Andries, daardie werk en ek weet jy's so besige ou, maar jy het nou nog 'n klompie werk by. Wat behels die portefeulje en waarvoor sal jy verantwoordelik wees? Waarvoor sal jy verantwoordelik wees?
Werner, kyk, by SIPS is daar 2 visiepresidente, waarvan die een portefeulje is verantwoordelik vir bewaring en die tweede portefeulje is verantwoordelik vir junior en junior ontwikkeling. So die portefeulje waarvoor ek verkies is vir junior ontwikkeling, om internasionaal die deelname van juniors te ontwikkel en belangstelling in die sport van hengel te ontwikkel. So dis nie noodwendig kompeterende hengel nie, maar algeheel die betrokkenheid van kinders tot hengel as 'n breë sport.
Wat sluit dit dan nou in? Sluit dit dan nou, is dit net juniors of is dit nou byvoorbeeld tot en met die onder 25s en daai tipe kategorieë ook?
Kyk, in SIPS is daar 'n verwysing na youth.
Ja.
So youth is tot op die ouderdom van 25. So dit is van klein deelname op penkoppe soos wat ons dit in Suid-Afrika ken, tot en met die ouderdomsgroep van 25.
Wat se tipe inisiatiewe voorsien jy wat in die volgende klompie jare? Dalk net eerstens, hoe lank is die portefeulje verkiesing? Hoe lank is dit?
Dis 'n 4-jaar termyn.
Okay, so jy het al 4 jaar wat jy nou 'n klompie goed moet gedoen kry.
Ja.
Wat is in jou kop? Hoe wil jy hierdie storie aanpak? Ek weet dis 'n sekere bietjie olifant.
Ja, dit is 'n moeilike begrip om te verstaan want jy weet daar's so 78 lande wat geaffilieer is by SIPS en van hulle het net senior deelname, van hulle het wel varswater deelname en junior deelname ensovoorts. So in die totale deelname wêreldwyd sal 'n mens nou moet gaan, ek uit die hart van die saak gaan bepaal wat is die deelname in elkeen van die lande in terme van die kinders of die jong mense. En dan 'n strategie rondom dit gaan bepaal. Nou ek het gister 'n telefoniese vergadering gehad met die president van SIPS om by hom te hoor wat is sy visie en wat wil hy graag hê uit die pos uit. En ons sal nou hierna 'n komitee vergadering hou om dan nou die doelwitte vir die termyn te bepaal. So hy is die rigtinggewer van SIPS, professor Matteoli van Italië, en ek sal nou ter ondersteuning van die doelwitte funksioneer wat die komitee dan nou sal saamstel.
Is jy opgewonde oor dit wat jy moet doen?
Ja,
Ontwikkeling is nog altyd naby aan jou hart. Jy werk baie hard in ontwikkeling van die sport en algeheel. So maak dit jou 'n bietjie opgewonde.
Jy weet, Werner, die verkiesing het plaasgevind en die komitee van SASAC het besluit om my te nomineer. En tydens die kongres het daar baie van die lande na my toe gekom voor die vergadering en hulle ondersteuning aangebied tot my en ek dink dit kom weens die erkenning van dit wat ons gedoen het in die land met ons deelnames en ons organisering van toernooie en wêreldkampioenskappe. En dit het veroorsaak dat ek 'n mate van vertroue het deur te weet dat hulle my steun. So as die lande, jy weet, 'n mens steun, dan is dit baie makliker om werksaamheid, jy weet, in samewerking van hulle af te kan kry. En dit maak my opgewonde. Jy weet, as ek nou nie verkeerd is nie, Werner, daar's 72 stemme gewees by die kongres en 66 daar rond het almal vir my gestem. So die restant het nou vir een van die ander persone gestem.
Dis 'n redelike groot mate van confidence, as jy
Ja, dis wat my opgewonde maak. Jy weet, ek kan nie regtig sê jy weet goed voel nie, want dis nie 'n prestasie van my nie. Maar dat die vertroue daar is, beteken vir my dat dit makliker gaan wees om samewerking te kry. Want jy kan nou verstaan, 'n mens moet nou kommunikeer met ander lande wat nie eers jou taal praat nie. Jy weet, dit is wyd verspreid oor die hele aardbol, en elkeen het sy eie doelwitte, sy eie funksionering, sy eie manier van goed doen. En dit is waar die dinamika probleem gaan lê en uitdaging gaan lê. En ons sport word deur miljoene mense beoefen. Die SIPS lidmaatskap is baie groot. Jy weet, daar's 'n hele paar miljoen lede in die verskillende lande wat by SIPS aangesluit is. Maar buite daai deelname, Werner, is daar verskriklik baie mense wat deelneem in die sport sosiaal. En dis waar ons fokusarea waarskynlik gaan lê, en dit is wat ek dink ek op gaan infokus om daardie betrokkenheid en belangstelling aan te wakker. Want die kinders, dink ek, jy weet, het nodig om te ontvlug, het nodig om betrokke te wees in 'n sport of 'n deelname wat jou 'n klomp eienskappe van jou karakter leer. Dit leer jou dissipline, dit leer jou om te fokus, dit leer jou baie goed uit hengeluid. Jy hoef nie kompetisies te doen om dit te doen nie. Maar daai karaktereienskappe gaan gebou word deur middel van sport. En om hulle betrokke te kan kry en die belangstelling aan te wakker. Ek dink dit is wat belangrik gaan wees. En in ons land het ons, jy weet, 'n goeie dryfkrag met die skole se deelname, en dit groei verskriklik baie. En daarvoor is ek baie dankbaar. Jy weet, dat baie goeie werkers by die skole in die provinsies wat betrokke is om die deelname van die skole se spanne vir ons aan te wakker. En die ouers wat dit steun. En daai momentum het ons lank gevat. Jy weet, ons het begin klein en nou raak dit al groter en groter en groter, en een van die dae grillik om te dink, hoe gaan ons hierdie masjien stop?
Dis 'n groot sneeubal.
Want hy is besig om nou baie momentum op te kry, of op te bou.
Is daar ander lande wat soortgelyk aan Suid-Afrika lekker momentum het wat jy kan of al reeds geïdentifiseer het waar daar is wat jy dalk wil gaan kyk wat hulle doen? Is daar lande wat uitstaan waar jy dink daai ouens het 'n goeie program, ek wil graag gaan kyk?
In die groter federasies, Werner, is daar hoofsaaklik Italië, Portugal in 'n mate, en Frankryk is van die wat die goed georganiseerde strukture is. So waarskynlik gaan ek by hulle aanklop. Wat ek nou nog nie aan by uitgekom het, en ek weet ek is nou maar nog vars in die stoel, Poland se lidmaatskap is 600,000 lede in hulle hengelorganisasie.
Dis massief.
Dis baie groot. So daar is brakaarde wat daar lê, wat ek nog nie, jy weet, ingetap het om te verstaan hoe hulle funksioneer en wat is hulle deelnames nie. Die deelnames wat ek aan blootstelling het, is die wat by wêreldkampioenskappe is, wat ek daar sien in inskrywings en uitslae. Maar die grootes is hoofsaaklik Italië, Portugal, Frankryk en Spanje. Amerika het 'n struktuur, maar hulle is nie wyd verspreid in verskillende dissiplines nie. Hulle dissiplines is nog min. Hulle het nog nie begin uitbrei wat
ja, hulle is baie gespesialiseer en
ja,
groot en seker is en
ja, ander het hulle nog glad nie blootstelling. Ja. So by hulle gaan dit beslis nie, jy weet, een van die aantrekkingskragte wees nie. Hulle het 'n goeierige universiteitsdeelname in Swartbaar hengel, maar die res bestaan nie. En dit is een van die areas wat ek dink ons tekortkoming is wêreldwyd. Ons het 'n gaping tussen die 20-jariges na 28 jaar wat deelnames betref. En dit is die studietydperk.
Ja.
In my opinie. En ons het daai deelname probleem omdat ons nie 'n deelname platform het vir daai struktuur of daai ouderdomsgroep. Ja.
Andries, wat kan ons kykers, ons hengelaars en media in Suid-Afrika doen om jou te ondersteun met hierdie taak van jou? Is daar iets wat ons kan doen om te help?
Ek dink Werner, jy weet, eerstens moet ek dankie sê vir jou bereidwilligheid. Jy weet, ek het nou gesê ek het nie gekom omdat ek dit alleen gedoen het nie. En 'n mens kan ook nie verder voortgaan alleen nie, verseker nie. Jy weet, ek kan nie. Dis te moeilik om soveel mense te bereik as jy alleen is. Maar as jy hande vat, dan kan 'n mens maklik, jy weet, baie meer mense bereik. So die belangrike boodskap in terme van sport is, laat iemand net blootstelling kry. Ek, jy weet, maak gereeld die verwysing daarna dat 'n persoon moet net een keer vis vang. Hy moet nie net gaan visvang nie, hy moet 'n vis vang. Want as hy 'n vis vang, gaan hy die lekker ervaring daarvan kry. En wat dit is om met die natuur blootstelling te hê, die vis te bewonder, die vis vry te laat. Daai hele ervaring, jy weet, dis amper soos wat jy met jou hond speel. Dit skep 'n gevoel van vergenoegdheid in jou siel. En as ons net meer mense blootstel en kommunikeer van die deelname in die sport, nie noodwendig kompeterend nie. Dis 'n ander deel van ons sport wat ook belangrik is vir my. Maar die sosiale deelname is vir my.
Ek noem dit 'n I love fishing moment.
Ja.
Dis wat die ouens moet hê.
Ja.
Ons moet hulle kry om te kan sê, yes, we love you.
Ja. En dis waar ander mense kan help. Jy weet, as jy net 'n vriend, 'n pa of 'n oom of 'n tannie net saamvat na die water toe en blootstel van die dag, jy weet, die dag se hengeldae of 'n foto wys of 'n storie vertel. Ek dink dit is wat ons nodig het, is die oordrag van die storie van hengel. Dit sal help.
Ja, share fishing.
Ja, dis wat ons moet doen. Jy weet, ek was nou bevoorreg gewees om in Slovenië so 'n bietjie te hengel. En die stories wat 'n mens kry deur daar met mense te praat, mense wat teenwoordig is, wat jy langs die water sien. Dis vreeslik lekker om die stories van hengel te kan deel met mekaar. Maar dan deel jy dit met 'n hengelaar. Maar as dit 'n vreemde persoon is wat nie blootstelling daaraan het nie, is dit soveel meer lekker om te sê, weet jy wat, dis my storie, kom ek gaan wys jou volgende keer, kom saam met my. En so ontwikkel die blootstelling geleentheid.
Great. Andries, baie sterkte, weer eens baie geluk van ons in Suid-Afrika se kant af. Ook dankie dat jy die organisasie saam met jou vat en dat jy so 'n goeie ambassadeur vir ons sport is en sterkte met jou taak.
Baie dankie vir die geleentheid.
Okay. Wel, daar's die antwoord. Maak seker jy vat iemand om te gaan hengel en then create a I love fishing moment. Ons is nou terug. Welcome back to yet another interesting issue of Fishing 101, where we handle basic stuff that can be used in advanced situations. So today, there might be several reasons why you would like to join monofilament to braid. So the first one is, if you have mono on your reel and you would like to cast with a braid leader, it means that you have a thicker braid with a thinner monofilament. So this is the first one. So what we do, we use the mono, just make a little loop, take the braid, push it through, take it with that hand and that one, so you need some fingers to work with. 1, 2, so we're going to do that 10 times. Okay, that's it. And then you look at in which direction that came through, and you put it through that same loop in the opposite direction. That's it. So that's what you have. And then you can pull it almost tight. And then you need a little bit of lubrication, and then you can pull it tight. That's it. One pull. It's important to do it once so that it seats properly. Okay, that's it. It's a nice knot. It's slim, very thin. When you do the tag ends, it's important that the mono is clipped off with a nail clipper right against the knot. So you need to pull on this tag end so that it slits up right to the knot, and then you nip it. The tag end of the braid must be cut off with a braid scissors, not a nail clipper. It doesn't do it properly. Also, you don't need to clip that off against the knot. You can leave 2 millimeters because a little piece of braid doesn't do anything, and it gives you a little bit of security. That's how you do it for when you have thin mono on the reel and a thicker braid for casting. Ja, nou gee ons natuurlik weer lekker pryse weg. Baie dankie aan Supercast. Wat julle daar kry is 2 pakke voer. Die een is 'n Extreme, die gewone SVB Extreme, en die ander een is 'n SVB Extreme Superfine. Ek hou nogal van die Superfine, hy werk vir my baie mooi. Dan van die nuwe Wasp, floaties, pitte, dips en 'n paar van die dews, 3 verskillende dews. Dankie Skalla. Om die waarheid te sê, ons het gister het ek en Skalk baie mooi gehengel met daai kombinasies, en een van die dae gaan julle 'n mooi video sien van hoe ons die visse bymekaar maak met daai kombinasies. Dan van Jumbo se nuwe dippies wat uit is, 'n paar dippies en ook 'n reeks harde floaties en 'n sak bowline kolletjie voer. So dis die 2 goedjies wat ons weggee. Die ander ding wat ons ook besluit het om te doen is, op die oomblik is daar 'n lekker promosie wat hardloop van Souties. Hy het vir ons 'n kas gegee, hierdie pragtige mooi Four Anglers Kiat kas, wat ons gee vir 'n nuwe jaarlikse lid wat aansluit. We've decided to extend it with another 2 weeks to give a few more people an opportunity to be in the draw for that as well. So we're going to draw that at the next one in 2 weeks time. So daar's nog so 'n bietjie tyd vir jou om ook seker te maak jy sluit aan by Four Anglers, en jy is dan ook in die trekken vir daardie pragtige kas van Soutie. In die meantime kan jy jou nou by hom bestel. Hy hardloop 'n special op hierdie stadium op die Kiat kaste, die Legend kaste vir R2600, which is 'n steal. So maak seker jy kry dit. Nou gaan ek gou die wenners van hierdie 2 pakkette. Die eerste ene is die Supercast pakket. En die wenner is, en hierdie sal natuurlik afgelewer word by jou huis deur JKJ Express Couriers. So they make sure that all the prizes gets delivered at your doorstep. En die wenner van die Supercast hamper is Tanya Els. Tanya Els, baie welkom ook by Four Anglers as 'n lid. En baie geluk. Die volgende ene, die Jumbo hamper saam met die bowline, is Wilco Kleinhans. Wilco, baie geluk. Maak seker nie, as jy lid is, het ons julle details. So alles is in die hak. Dit sal afgelewer word deur JKJ Express Couriers. So, dit is die wenners van nou. Kom ons gesels verder met Christopher. Baie dankie Supercast dat julle dit vir ons moontlik maak om hierdie insetsel te hê. Chris, now let's get to the thicker things. So we spoke about systems and a lot of other things, but one of the tasks, and when you mentioned mistakes, I thought to myself, this is a place where you can easily make a mistake, and that is feature finding or profiling. I talk about profiling the bottom. So the feature finding is one of the first things that you do when you start. And you do that before you fish. You've got a time period. Just explain to the viewers in terms of the rules of the competitive carp facet. When are you allowed to do what? How much time do you have for what?
The rules actually changed recently. You're only allowed to start feature finding when the competition actually starts. So in the past, there was a siren that went off that allowed you into your camp. You set your camp up and you could start feature finding during that time period. The rules have subsequently changed so that's no longer allowed. So you'll have a time period to enter your camp, get your camp up. Another hooter goes that allows you to put the rods in the water. And only once the rods are in the water are you allowed to start feature finding.
Oh, so you can actually cast the rod with a bait or cast all the rods with the bait and then you do feature finding?
Yeah, so I mean, the way that it's set up now, that's probably the best strategy. That at least you've got an opportunity to start fishing. So normally what I'll do is I'll put my rods in more on the right-hand border of my camp and start feature finding on the left-hand side, and then put them more on the left-hand border of the camp and feature find on the right-hand side. Then you have to risk a line in between your rods because obviously you're dragging the sled. You need to sort of space them out to do a middle line. And
Doesn't it take a bit of focus away when you've got a rod in there? So now you're busy feature finding and now there's a rod running and then you stop the process. How do you get around to that? How do you get focus, or how do you do it?
there needs to be a good communication with you and your partner. If one of those rods do take off and you are busy, you need to quickly put a back lead on to try and pin that line to the bottom that you can fight the fish over the marker float. Last thing you want to do is pick that marker float up, start dragging it, pick up all your lines. It's a huge mess, waste even more time undoing all of these knots and getting the rods back in the water. So I used to prefer it when we could feature find beforehand, but the rules have changed, the international rules. So this is the best way we try to get around it at the moment.
Okay, when you do feature finding, tell us about the process. How do you go about? What does your system look like?
How does the mark float system?
Well, maybe you can touch on that as well, but then also the process. So
Sure.
The process of doing.
Okay, so I mean, we'll have a chart with a grid on it, and we will have intervals, say, every 5 meters. You will throw a line on your the border of your camp. So normally you would do at least one on your left border, one on your right border, and one down the center. Because I know Bloemhof, I would only throw 3 lines. If I see something abnormal, I might investigate that in more detail, especially if I'm seeing a variation between left and right. If it's not like a uniform,
like that.
maybe something's banking in from the side, you want to explore that, you might throw more lines. But obviously we also know Bloemhof really well, been fishing it for forever, since I was 15. So we've got a really good idea of what's going on. We're really just checking what's specifically going on in front of us and what might have changed through the season, the flow of the water and so on, if a bank has moved slightly or something like this.
Okay, so in brief, and I know it's quite a detailed process, but what did you see with your profiling? What was the data that looked back at you after doing the...
Sure. So on this particular event, we fished very high levels of water. I think it was like 115% or something. I've never had this before. The water level was rising while we were fishing by maybe this sort of depth. Very unusual. What it meant was here close by, there was some grass in the water, which is not normally in the water. It also meant it was really deep right in front of us.
Grass, like grass, normal veldgras.
Veldgras that has been flooded with water pushing up into it.
Okay.
So Bamboes has got like steps in most of the areas. And this brought a step we would normally be camping on into the fishing zone.
You were now fishing on.
Yeah, well, I mean, we stepped straight off the side and we're almost over knee deep in water. They actually had to change the rules for the event to allow us to go over knee deep, which is the normal rule, as a result of this water that was pushing up. So what it meant was the bottom at the back, the deeper water, was deeper than normal due to the water level that had pushed up. So call it that bottom in my area was about 8.5 meters, 8.4 meters. You start coming up a slope to come to like the first step. So it would come from 8.4 gradually up to approximately like a 3-meter shelf or so. And then from there, it would come up to about 2 meters and gradually come up to the bank.
Okay, so they had a few.
There were a few areas where it dropped off faster, where it was more flat, and where it gradually dropped off again.
So after the feature finding, and you've got your whole chart, you obviously marked a couple of areas. So where did your circles, how many circles were there and where were they?
Yeah, so I normally like to let the fish talk to me. So in the start of the competition, I'll scatter my rods at different distances to try to pick up what zone are the fish naturally moving in. In this particular competition, we started catching some fish around 100 meters in the beginning. We definitely knew something around there would be good. I also picked up some fish in about 70 meters. And as a result of that, that 70-meter mark is not too far from us. It's a good distance to try to bring the fish in a bit.
Yeah.
So that made us comfortable to fish in that type of zone. And then I come back to my chart and I say, cool, well, at 70 meters, it was 6.5 meters deep about. At 65, it was 6 meters. So we decided that we'd feed our one spot at 65, that we could fish at the 70 meters. We wanted to fish behind it.
Why do you fish behind your spot and not on your spot?
We do both. So we also fish on our spot. But what we tend to find with the volume of feed we're putting in, it's good to fish on the edges of the feed because there's a lot of competition for the hook bait in the feed. So sometimes you want to catch the fish when they're approaching the spot because your hook bait might be standing out a bit more. Other times the fish are on the feed, in the feed. Then we like to fish in the feed.
Does the quality of the hookup differ if you are in the feed than outside the feed in terms of the activity or something like that? You sometimes get foul-hooked fish and things like that in the feed when there are too many fish, or
you definitely get liners.
Yeah.
So you can pick up that the fish are there. Sometimes that's an indication it's time to come back because you're fishing over them and the big school of fish is over your main line. I wouldn't say I'm more focused on my hook bait presentation. How buoyant is that hook bait in that kind of scenario? If I'm not getting the hookup that I like, I might change to a bottom bait, I might change to a wafter, I might change to a pop-up and try find what type of presentation is working best in that scenario.
Now, on that subject, did that change through the 72 hours? Or did you start off with something and it kept for the...
We started off with something that worked for us mostly throughout the competition. I'm more explaining to you like my thought process as an angler in general in these type of situations. If the fish are there, I want to catch them where they are. I don't want to move away from them because I'm not getting the hookup rate that I like. I rather try to refine my approach to get the result I want to get in the place the fish currently are.
But you spoke about wafters and pop-ups and presentation and so on. So my question is, throughout the 72 hours, does that, or did that, in this case at Bloemhof, did it change, or was there something that you caught on to and it was okay for the 72 hours? Or did that dynamic change through the time? Did you have to do alterations as it went on?
I would say 90%, without giving away too much, of my approach was consistent for the whole competition. There was a time period for about 10% of the competition towards the end where that changed. But I think if I had stuck to my 90% approach...
Okay, so it wasn't as if you were, then you had to do this and try something else. And so you didn't have to change all the time. You could get something and it was just ticking over.
There were so many fish. They were just so available. You could have tried different approaches and I think been equally successful with different approaches. We just stuck to the approach we were using that was giving us the best hookup ratio and landing fish ratio. And once we found something that worked, we just stuck to that and try to keep the mechanics as similar as possible the whole time. Even if we're changing flavor or something like this, try to use a similar size bait, a similar weight bait, and so on. Rather than changing too many variables at one time, because we got to a mechanical result. The rig mechanics was working. We're getting the result we were looking for. We lost fish a lot in the beginning, like I told you. Once we refined and tweaked and got to the right answer, we try to stick to that as far as we could.
What tasks on the peg belongs to who?
This can change throughout the competition. Generally, there was a saying that I learned from Peter White. Whoever's gooiing the fish raak, let them gooi.
Okay, so hierdie keer wie het gegooi?
This time we both threw. I did most of the baiting up in the beginning, although we always alternate. You end up getting bored. Also getting tired, physically exerting. Small, meticulous work on the table, baiting up the whole time, landing fish the whole time. So we alternate. We go through stages where we take turns. And then whatever, I must bait up 15 hook links, and then Hakim must bait up 15 hook links.
And when it came to the feeding?
When it came to the feeding, I'll be honest, Hakim did a lot of that work, especially the preparation of the feed and getting everything ready to go into the water. I think the important thing is somebody must make sure you're getting ready to get the feed in the water, because you mustn't miss your window. When the fish bite this much, you can easily get distracted and forget to feed and realize, well, op die laaste nippie, here's a problem. This feed is not in the water. I'm going to run out tonight.
Hoe belangrik was dit geweest om te voer en die frekwensie?
It was important. The fish were biting so much that sometimes you could forget that you need to feed. Because whatever the last batch of feed you've put in is still working well. And as I say, it happened to us more than once that Hakim is like, hey, broer, the stuff needs to get in. I mean, there were certain time periods I even considered taking out the rods and both of us just feed, because if we don't get the feed in tonight, we're going to pay the price.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that might answer your question best.
Yeah.
We had a situation where there were a lot of fish in the area naturally. It was important to keep the bait in there, to concentrate them where you wanted them, for the purpose of bringing them in quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we didn't really go for like a trickle feed type of approach.
So jy klomp gevoer en dan vis julle en dan voer julle 'n klomp en dan vis julle.
When the bite tempo comes down, it's a good time to realize we should think about feeding.
What was the indicator of a bite tempo coming down? What were you looking for?
So it changed throughout the competition. I would say if it starts getting to the point that the rods are lying, like a rod is lying about 45 minutes to an hour. Just remember, if they're each lying an hour, one rod is going every 15 minutes, so that keeps you quite busy. We definitely had time periods where the fish were, you would rebait 4 rods, throw 1, 2, 3, 4, by the fourth one, the first one goes. So, I mean, then that bite tempo is maybe 6 minutes or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
It can get so fast that it's actually difficult to keep up with it. At those stages, we actually realized it was best to land 4 fish, bait 4 rods, throw 4 rods, land 4 fish, and so on.
One of the processes that needs to be tuned.
Yeah.
Where
Obviously,
you
you try to
mistakes.
keep them in as much as you can.
Yeah.
But there were definitely time periods where it was just too fast for that.
Last question. On the peg, and I'm talking dynamics, what do you and Hakim disagree on?
I don't think we had a disagreement. I'm very particular about the partners that I fish with, because I get very limited freedom and break in my life. I work really hard. I don't have an opportunity to take a rest often. And for me, I love fishing. It must be, I love working, doing things like at an extreme level, but we must enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I must say, I've always enjoyed it with all of my partners. And it was a great one with Hakim. There were some times that were difficult. So normally the pressure can begin to rise if things start getting challenging.
Yeah.
At a stage we were behind Jason and them, and we really needed to catch up, and it wasn't working as well as we needed to work. And then we do a fishing competition. We split up, 2 rods, whatever, maybe 1 short for each of us, 1 long for each of us. And then we start figuring it out until one of us or both of us are back onto the fish. Then we decide collectively what is the fastest way to get the fish in the net as fast as possible in terms of bait up time and so on. From there, we synergize.
Well, that was my question. How do you resolve it if you have got a view and you believe that A is the best and Hakim believe that B is the best? How do you resolve it? But you say you do a bit of a competition and then you say let the data decide.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain things that's really difficult. Say, for example, decision on feeding. But then it's easier for you to agree on a principle. Like we're going to feed where the fish want to bite.
Yeah.
Then the fish can talk to you and the fish can decide rather than you having to decide. The next thing becomes about what rigs are we putting on, what baits are we putting on, what dip. And the fishing competition is a nice, fun way to actually learn from Mgepia to break this ice and kickstart things again.
Okay. Well, Chris, well done. 1.1 ton. Excellent performance. It was great. good win for you guys, and we are proud of you.
Thank
So well
you.
done. So I'm not going to let you go empty-handed. So first thing, I'm going to give you a glass from the fast. I'm going to give to you so that you can take it home.
Thank
I
you.
know it comes from a long time back.
Thank you very
And
much.
then I would like to give you a shirt that you can wear whenever you go fishing. And
Nice.
show everybody that you love it.
The Bank Angler shirt. I'm honored. I appreciate. Thank
So
you.
thank you. Thank you for being here and
Appreciate
sharing some information with us.
Always happy to help.
Okay, wel, dit is dit vir die aand, ek dink. Kom ons maak seker. Ja, ons gaan gou kyk na Gys Spitzer se Pick of the Week, om kyk wat hulle het. En dan wil ek baie dankie sê vir almal wat vir ons hierdie pakkies geskenk het. Soutie vir die kas wat ons volgende keer gaan weggee. Supercast, Bowline en Jumbo, baie dankie daarvoor. En dan Gys Spitzer Motors, Orion Audio Visual en Campmaster wat ons borge vir die program is. Nou ja, tot oor 2 weke. Ons sien julle weer en lekker hengel tot dan. Maak seker, julle sal nou op die einde sien I Love Fishing. Kyk na hierdie videoetjie, stuur vir ons in en sien jou gesig ook op die program waar jy vir ons sê I love fishing because. Let me ask you, why do you love fishing?
Ooh, I love to get outdoors and I love the excitement of the unknown.
Well, go to and find the unknown and send us some pics. Tot volgende keer. Tot ziens.
Ek hou nie van visvang nie, ek is hier want my vrou maak my kom.
Ek hou van visvang. Dis amazing om weg te kom, iets anders te doen, in die natuur te wees en miskien te kyk wat jy kry of nie kry nie.
Ek hou van visvang, want dit is 'n baie groot geleentheid vir 'n kind om elke keer dam toe te kom en te leer van elke iets nuuts.
Ek hou van visvang want ek het basies 'n kantoorwerk, 5 dae 'n week. So dis my uitkomkans en my wegbreek uit die gewoel uit.
Ek hou van visvang want dit is beter as blank.